In regards to the offseason, that there's a lot of things we could talk about. We could talk about the surprise drafting of Gibbs in the first round. We could talk about Jamison Williams getting knocked for 6 games and kind of delaying seeing what this offense could look like in totality. But let's go with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson doesn't leave, which everyone seemed to assume he was going to ascend to get a head coaching job somewhere. Ben Johnson doesn't leave. Talk about the impact of him staying and what that means for this offense that we all seem to agree on is on the rise.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge in a variety of ways. And we don't like to overrate play callers. We don't like to give all of the credit to the guy calling the plays because the players on the field are the ones executing that. They are the ones that are seeing out the vision of the offensive coordinator. But it brings continuity, first and foremost. So Jared Goff, he gets another year in the same offensive system. And unlike most offensive coordinators, Ben Johnson doesn't just run one type of system. It's not just a stretched zone play action system. He likes to mesh his concept. So sometimes it will be a man blocking scheme. Sometimes it'll be a zone blocking scheme. He likes to mix it up, which isn't something you often see. And that is why it's so difficult to defend the Lions. That is why last year DeAndre Swift had so many breakaway runs because the run game is so diverse. They run so many different types of plays that you don't expect to see all executed by one team. And then they go out and upgrade at the running back position. And I love DeAndre Swift, don't get me wrong. But you go from DeAndre Swift, who's a 4-4 guy, to Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a 4-3 guy. That's an upgrade. I love Jamal Williams too, but David Montgomery is an upgrade as well. So the run game is going to be even better with a still dominant offensive line. The passing game, don't get me wrong, losing DJ Chark hurts. Trading TJ Hawkinson downgraded as well, but they learned to adjust without TJ Hawkinson. They get a better run after catch option with their new tight end, Sam Laporte, a second-round pick out of Iowa. And then Jamison Williams, when he returns, he can kind of offer some of that DJ Chark type ability. And even if not, they've still got depth. They've got Marvin Jones, who they brought back. He's going to be catching all sorts of touchdowns and third down catches. He's going to be just a possession receiver. You still have Josh Reynolds. You still have Khalif Raymond as well. So overall, the Lions offense is the same as last year in a lot of ways, but upgraded in a lot of other ways.
To piggyback off of that, I think, the point about Jamison Williams is a good one because he's kind of the guy we kind of just been waiting for. Last year, we had to wait because of injuries. And now this year, we kind of have to wait at the beginning because of now the suspension. I'm not saying bust. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not hot taking. I guess what I'm saying is we don't know what he is yet. We know what he was in college. We've seen flashes in very small sample sizes. How confident are you in that Jamison Williams can be what we thought he was going to be coming out a couple of years ago?
I believe he can be. I believe he will be, but you can't ignore the red flags. Like you said, we don't want to label him a bust just yet, but you can't ignore the red flags. And we knew about the first red flag, that he wasn't going to play much last year, that he was coming off the ACL. The problem was, okay, he missed all of last year. This year, he's going to get all of training camp to adjust to Jared Goff. They'll get to learn together. And then he goes out and hurts his ankle to start training camp, or it might have been a different injury, but either way, he misses time at the start of camp, and then he gets a hamstring strain at the end of camp and misses the final 2 preseason games, misses all these valuable reps with Jared Goff. And so, missing 6 games, missing a bunch of training camp, I don't know if he's actually going to hit on a statistical standpoint, but the speed that he offers will at least keep the defense honest. He'll open things up for Amon-Ra St. Brown underneath. So, I'm not, what am I trying to say here? I am confident, and I believe he will hit the ceiling we expect him to, but even if he doesn't, it's not going to be the end of the world. The Lions are one of those teams that can afford to take a big swing and miss on a player like Jamison Williams.
Yeah, and I think, trying to analyze the strengths of this offense. Obviously, that there's still some people that might not be Goff believers, and that's fair to a certain degree. As you mentioned, with the running game, Swift and Jamal Williams were very integral to the success, more so Williams than Swift. But from everything that I've been reading and listening on the way in, it's like Jahmyr Gibbs, they're kind of expecting him to be a better version of DeAndre Swift, or maybe what they thought they were going to get out of the DeAndre Swift. How do you see Gibbs working into this offensive system?
Exactly that way. They wanted DeAndre Swift to be a big-time pass catcher, a big-time playmaker, and when he was on the field to get those touches, he absolutely was. He led the entire NFL in yards per touch, but that doesn't get it done when you're not on the field all the time. So Jahmyr Gibbs, a smaller player, which some people Bleav will lead to injuries. I am not one of those people. I'm not just going to say, oh, he's small, he's going to get hurt. Not how the modern NFL works. And especially with Jameson Williams out to start the year, we very well could see Jahmyr Gibbs finish second on the team in receptions or targets for the first 6 games. He's going to be that type of player where he gets 6 receptions a game. Maybe he only gets 8 to 12 carries a game, but the work he does in the receiving game is more than going to make up for it.
Gotcha. Now, this offensive line, I think when people talk about offensive lines and who has the best unit around the league, I don't hear a lot about the lines, but I don't see any weaknesses on this offensive line. I think this is a top tier offensive line. You know, what do you think about this unit as a whole? And, you know, is there any issues or any weaknesses that you see? Because, I mean, I'm not an insider on the lines, but based off, you know, especially with Ragnow and Glasgow and even the tackles, with even Sewell stepping up, I don't see a lot of weaknesses here, if there are any at all.
No, absolutely not. Ragnow is arguably the best center in the NFL. I'd probably give it to Jason Kelce, but he's in the conversation. Penei Sewell is in the conversation to best young right tackle or best right tackle, period. Again, probably give it to Lane Johnson and the Philadelphia Eagles. But also have a Pro Bowler at left guard, Jonah Jackson. Taylor Decker has been a stalwart for years. And at right guard, Graham Glasgow or Hal Vaitai, both of them are talented players. They are both starting NFL players, and they're having a competition. And if one of them goes down, then okay, say if Ragnow goes down, okay, Glasgow kicks into center, Vaitai at guard, you are still set. So they can afford to take an injury, and they're still going to be fine. And it's just, like you said, there is no weakness. It is just pure dominance across the board.
Gotcha. So now I think we're pretty much lockstep in how good this offense can be potentially. Maybe we can, you know, go back and forth in regards to the receivers, but with no Williams until, you know, the 6-game suspension, it's kind of hard to judge this group. Defensively, though, this is where, to me, there's a lot of conversation, and some of it might not be that good. So obviously you have the defensive rookie of the year in Aiden Hutchinson anchoring that line. I'm not sure what else is there from a pass rush perspective. The linebacking core, obviously they upgraded with Jack Campbell in the first round. He looks to be the guy in that middle. He looks to be the part. Secondary-wise, they've made a lot of wholesale changes across the board, seemingly. So talk to me about this defense, your likes, your dislikes. Is there anything you want us to keep an eye on with this Detroit Lions defense?
So the biggest worry would have to be the secondary, even though they did invest heavily in it. They brought in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They drafted Brian Branch. Those are 2 starters, one at slot corner and one at safety. And then they have Kirby Joseph from last year, who picked off Aaron Rodgers 3 times in the season as well. Brought in Jack Campbell to upgrade the linebacking core, which was already a good and deep linebacking core. Alex Anzalone and Malcolm Rodriguez really put it together down the stretch last year, and now Rodriguez is a backup. Now we have Jerry Jacobs, who is competing to be a starter with Emmanuel Mosley, but he was the Lions' best corner last year. He goes from their best corner to cornerback 2 or 3. That's an upgrade. And on the defensive line, there's no big names that you see, but aside from Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, but John Kaminsky was quietly dominant last year. Even after he broke his hand, he was playing inside, outside. He was offering the juice. James Houston, who's listed as a backup, who has been treated as a backup this entire preseason, weirdly enough, he was second among all rookies last year in sacks. And so with another step forward from him, the juice from the pass rush is going to be enough. It's not going to be dominant, but it's deep enough that they have starting caliber players across the board at edge rusher. I wish they did a little bit more to address the interior defensive line. They're hoping that Levi Onwuzurike, who was a second-round pick a couple years ago, he can finally put it together. But that's kind of the big hole, is the interior with the defensive tackles. And then If the secondary doesn't shape out the way they plan it to, then we're kind of into some problems there because it's not very deep in the secondary outside of safety.
Gotcha. And when you look at the the prospect of the Packers receivers, they got some very young dynamic receivers. The Vikings obviously have Jefferson, and they went out there and got Addison in the draft. The Bears went out there and got DJ Moore with Mooney potentially coming back, and then maybe they get something out of Chase Claypool. So the secondary in this division, you got to have some dogs in that defensive backfield.
Absolutely, absolutely. And at face value, they do. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is one of the biggest talkers in the NFL. He is going to get people agitated. It's just going to be, how does he work with a Cam Sutton, who they just signed? How does he work with a Kirby Joseph, who knows the system? He's the one returning starter aside from Jerry Jacobs, who wasn't a full-time starter. So how do these guys all work together individually? The talent's there. How do they work together in the communication and play on the field?
9.5, is that too low of a number? Is that too high a number of a number? Where are you sitting at when it comes to 9.5 being the line set for the Lions?
I think that's the perfect number from Vegas. Obviously, I think they're going to hit the over. I Bleav that the Lions are going to be an 11-12 win team, but Vegas has to hedge some of that risk, right? They can't just put them right at 11 wins, right at 10 wins. It's just not that team yet. But by next year, yeah, they could have a double-digit win total. And in general, if a team has a double-digit win total, that's something that I kind of just stay away from in terms of I'm not putting money down on that. It's hard to win double digits, even if you're a favorite to.
Agreed.
So I think the line is set perfectly. I also think they smashed the over.